In the Heat of the Night once made audiences believe that order and the law could triumph over any chaos. Yet when the cameras stopped rolling, the very people who created that story stepped into lives filled with instability. Some left Hollywood in despair, some collapsed under illness and addiction, and some departed far too early. Join us as we uncover the truth behind the scenes and honor the legacies they left behind. Carroll O'Connor as Chief William O. Bill Gillespie. Carroll O'Connor was born on August 2, 1924, in Manhattan, New York. At 64 years old, he took on the role of Police Chief William O. Bill Gillespie, a rigid, conservative Southern lawman with deep moral complexity, in the Heat of the Night in 1988. The role marked a powerful return to television after many years living in the enormous shadow of Archie Bunker. Behind that success was a man constantly stretched by pressure and conflict. O'Connor was known for exerting extreme control over scripts, frequently clashing with writers and producers. At the same time, his marriage to Nancy Fields, which began in 1951 and appeared solid from the outside, had to endure years of strain caused by work, fame, and suppressed anger. During this period, he continued to collect awards and participate in projects such as Archie Bunker's Place, but the cost was prolonged mental exhaustion. The greatest tragedy of O'Connor's life came in 1995, when his adopted son Hugh O'Connor died by suicide due to drug addiction. The shock nearly shattered his inner world. Once known for his toughness, O'Connor fell into depression, struggled with alcohol, and was repeatedly hospitalized for heart disease and diabetes. He transformed his private grief into a public fight against drugs, pursuing lawsuits and legal advocacy. Carroll O'Connor ultimately passed away on June 21, 2001, at the age of 76 in Culver City, California, from a heart attack resulting from complications of diabetes. He was laid to rest at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, with a memorial placed beside his son. His estimated net worth of around $25 million accumulated from television and film royalties and real estate closed the life of a towering television icon marked by profound personal loss. Howard Rollins as Virgil Tibbs. Howard Rollins was born on October 17, 1950, in Baltimore, Maryland. In 1988, at 38 years old, he portrayed Virgil Tibbs, a brilliant, composed detective whose modern mindset served as the perfect counterbalance to Gillespie's conservatism in the Heat of the Night. Before that, Rollins had earned an Oscar nomination for Ragtime and made a strong impression in A Soldier's Story, positioning him as one of the most talented black actors of his generation. Yet Rollins's personal life was a hidden storm. Repeated romantic breakdowns, marital instability, and the pressure of public image drove him toward cocaine and alcohol as an escape. Arrests, legal scandals, and psychological instability gradually destroyed his professional credibility, leading to ongoing conflicts with the production team. Even while working on In the Heat of the Night, his addiction caused absences, loss of control, and ultimately his removal from the project. After leaving the series, Rollins attempted rehabilitation and returned in a few small roles, as an effort to redeem himself and his career. However, his health had already deteriorated severely. In 1996, Rollins was diagnosed with AIDS, accompanied by lymphoma, and the disease progressed so rapidly that he had little time to prepare emotionally. Howard Rollins died on December 8, 1996, at the age of 46 in New York, from complications of lymphoma related to AIDS. The brief 6 weeks between diagnosis and death became a period in which he faced loneliness, regret, and an unfinished career that never had the chance to be fulfilled. His estimated net worth of around $500,000, largely from remaining film income and personal assets, marked the end of a life that once reached great heights before quietly descending into tragedy. Hugh O'Connor as Lonnie Jameson. Hugh O'Connor was born on April 7, 1962, in Rome, Italy. At 26 years old, he portrayed Lonnie Jameson, a young, emotionally driven officer coming of age within the harsh policing environment of the American South in the Heat of the Night in 1988. The role marked the first time Hugh was taken seriously on his own merits, no longer seen merely as Carroll O'Connor's son. Behind the scenes, however, he was fighting a quiet battle with illness and personal identity. As a teenager, Hugh had suffered from Hodgkin's lymphoma, enduring prolonged chemotherapy and surgery that left lasting physical and psychological scars. The use of prescription painkillers following treatment gradually led him into addiction, which then escalated into alcohol and drug abuse. Although he appeared in brass and tried to build an independent image, his erratic behavior caused by addiction increasingly strained relationships with colleagues. Married life also failed to provide the stability he had hoped for. Hugh married Angela Clayton in 1992, and they had a son, but financial pressure, a struggling career, and the spiral of addiction kept the small family in constant instability. Multiple failed rehabilitation attempts pushed him into deep despair, with a sense of defeat before his own body and the weight of his family's legacy. On the third anniversary of his wedding, that hopelessness reached a point of no return. Hugh O'Connor died on March 28, 1995, at the age of 32 in Los Angeles, by suicide after a long struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. His ashes were interred in Rome, with a memorial marker later placed in the United States. His estimated net worth of about $1.2 million, largely from television royalties and personal assets, closed the tragic fate of a young actor who never managed to step out from his family's shadow. Carl Weathers, as Chief Hampton Forbes. Carl Weathers was born on January 14, 1948, in New Orleans, Louisiana. In 1993, at 45 years old, he took on the role of Police Chief Hampton Forbes, the successor to Gillespie, bringing a disciplined, rigid, and authoritative presence to In the Heat of the Night. The role reflected much of his own personality, outwardly strong, yet inwardly conflicted. Weathers' career was always intertwined with tension and prejudice. After his breakout success in Rocky as Apollo Creed and in Predator, he became typecast as a muscular action star, struggling to escape that image. On set, Weathers was known for his perfectionism and high demands for discipline and physical rigor, which often led to conflicts with co-stars and directors. The pressure to maintain the image of an invincible warrior caused him to quietly endure depression and a growing fear of being forgotten as he aged. His marital life was equally turbulent. 3 failed marriages left him emotionally exhausted, while the responsibility of raising children was constantly strained by an intense work schedule. In later years, Weathers began confronting serious health issues, particularly atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, which forced him to change his lifestyle. Carl Weathers ultimately passed away on February 1, 2024, at the age of 76 in Los Angeles, due to atherosclerotic heart disease. He was cremated and later honored on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His estimated net worth of around $8 million, accumulated through acting, endorsements, and business ventures, closed the life of an icon who fought not only on screen but also within his own personal life. Lois Nettleton, as Joanne St. John. Lois Nettleton was born on August 16, 1927, in Oak Park, Illinois. In 1988, at 61 years old, she appeared in the Heat of the Night as Joanne St. John, a composed, sharp woman whose calm exterior concealed deep emotional wounds. This period marked Lois's entry into the most mature and nuanced roles of her career. Behind the spotlight lay a deeply strained marital life. Her marriage to Gene Shepard collapsed after years of emotional conflict and creative imbalance, leaving Lois with a prolonged sense of rejection and loneliness. This breakdown came at a time when her career was already wavering due to ageism and gender bias, causing her to be repeatedly passed over for major projects, despite earlier acclaim in The Twilight Zone and on Broadway stages. The accumulation of disappointments pushed Lois to withdraw, choosing to work quietly rather than fight publicly for recognition. Running parallel to these emotional fractures was a long physical battle. Lois developed lung cancer but chose to keep her illness private, continuing to work even as her health deteriorated. Nevertheless, she kept appearing in television and stage projects as a way of clinging to her profession, even though each return to the set was a trial. The disease silently eroded her body, yet Lois endured alone, refusing to let personal pain overshadow her professional image. Sadly, Lois Nettleton passed away on January 18, 2008, at the age of 80, in Woodland Hills, California, due to complications from lung cancer. Her estimated net worth of around $3 million accumulated from television royalties, stage work, and personal investments, stands as the final imprint of a resilient career that was always fought for in silence. Denise Nicholas, as Harriet DeLong. Denise Nicholas was born on July 12, 1944, in Detroit, Michigan. In 1989, at 45 years old, she portrayed Harriet DeLong, a calm city councilwoman representing the voice of conscience amid power struggles in the Heat of the Night. Harriet DeLong was therefore not merely a character, but an echo of Denise's own life. Off-screen, Denise's marital life was a chain of ongoing tensions. Her marriage to Bill Withers collapsed amid emotional abuse, infidelity, and simmering confrontations, leaving her with wounds that lingered for many years. Subsequent relationships also failed to bring stability, particularly as Denise was still grieving the murder of her sister Michelle. Over time, Denise continued acting while simultaneously battling inner fractures, striving to maintain balance between her personal life and her work. The psychological wounds that accumulated over decades deeply affected Denise's health and career choices. She gradually withdrew from the spotlight and turned to writing as a form of self-healing, channeling the experiences of marital collapse and personal loss into her work, Freshwater Road. Writing became the space where she could finally control her own narrative. By 2025, Denise Nicholas is 81 years old, living quietly while focusing on completing her memoirs and participating in social activism against inequality. Her estimated net worth of around $3 million derived from acting, book royalties, and creative projects reflects a life marked by profound depth and resilience. Crystal R. Fox, as Luann Corbin. Crystal R. Fox was born on January 1, 1964, in Tryon, North Carolina. At 25 years old, she played Luann Corbin, a tough young police officer carrying both ideals and personal wounds, in the Heat of the Night in 1989. This role brought Crystal widespread recognition on prime-time television. Luann Corbin closely reflected the path Crystal herself was walking. The greatest pressure in Crystal's life did not come from the spotlight, but from family expectations and identity. As the niece of Nina Simone, she grew up under the shadow of a legend, where every choice was measured, compared, and judged. During her time on In the Heat of the Night, Crystal constantly had to prove that she was not living off a legacy, while simultaneously confronting racial and gender bias that narrowed her opportunities or led to her being replaced due to creative differences. Crystal's romantic life was far from peaceful. One relationship ended amid prolonged tension, compounded by long-standing family fractures rooted in discrimination and heavy expectations, which led her to pour all her emotions into her work. She committed herself tirelessly to stage and screen as a form of self-protection, only achieving a major breakthrough years later with A Fall from Grace. By 2025, Crystal R. Fox is 61 years old and continues to work steadily in film and theater, while also taking on producing roles. Her estimated net worth is around $5 million, accumulated from long-running television work, film, and stage performances, reflecting a resilient and enduring career. Anne Marie Johnson as Althea Tibbs. Anne Marie Johnson was born on July 18, 1960, in Los Angeles, California. In 1988, at 28 years old, she portrayed Althea Tibbs, the intelligent, composed wife of Virgil Tibbs, bringing emotional depth to In the Heat of the Night. This role marked Anne Marie's entry into a more mature phase of her television career. Althea Tibbs was not loud or dominant, but she was always present as a moral and emotional anchor. Anne Marie's greatest challenges stemmed from value conflicts and racial barriers within the industry. She repeatedly turned down roles that contradicted her personal beliefs, a decision that significantly limited her opportunities. These pressures ran parallel to family responsibilities and a private marital life marked by underlying tension, as she struggled to balance acting with the desire for personal stability. Prolonged mental strain became Anne Marie's quiet test. Taking on leadership roles within the Actors Union, particularly when she became vice president of SAG, placed her in direct confrontation with major studios. These conflicts exposed her to intense political and psychological pressure, yet she continued working both as an actress and as an organizational leader. By 2025, Anne Marie Johnson is 65 years old and remains active in the entertainment industry as well as in artist leadership and advocacy. Her estimated net worth of around $4 million comes from television acting, comedy, and management roles, completing the portrait of a woman who chose perseverance and principle as her guiding values. Alan Autry as Bubba Skinner. Alan Autry was born on July 31, 1952, in Shreveport, Louisiana. At 36 years old, he played Bubba Skinner, a blunt, hot-tempered yet loyal Southern police officer who embodied very real moral contradictions in the Heat of the Night in 1988. Bubba Skinner was the role on which Alan staked his entire career. The first wave of pressure came from a risky career shift. Leaving professional football behind left Alan disoriented, leading to a period of alcohol and substance abuse as he entered Hollywood. During this time, his first marriage collapsed, leaving a sense of personal failure intertwined with professional instability. On the set of In the Heat of the Night, Alan had to constantly prove that he was more than just a former football player turned actor. These tensions continued to escalate as Alan's conservative political and religious views gradually became more visible, creating a clear distance between him and Hollywood's more liberal environment. He turned to faith as a spiritual anchor, remarried Kimberly Autry, and worked to rebuild his family life while maintaining his acting career. By 2025, Alan Autry is 73 years old, remains active in faith-based media, and has served 2 terms as mayor of Fresno. His estimated net worth is around $3 million, accumulated from acting, politics, and broadcasting, reflecting a life marked by many sharp turns. David Hart as Parker Williams. David Hart was born on February 6, 1954, in Marianna, Florida. In 1988, at the age of 34, he appeared in the Heat of the Night as Parker Williams, a gentle, dedicated police officer who often stood on the margins of major conflicts. This role became the deepest and most defining connection of David's career. Parker Williams closely reflected who he was: quiet, persistent, and rarely in the spotlight. Although critically respected, David was seldom given opportunities to break through, creating a subtle but lasting psychological pressure over many years. While In the Heat of the Night provided professional stability, it also unintentionally locked him into the image of a supporting role, gradually replacing personal ambition with acceptance of reality. David's marriage and family life were kept private, but they were far from effortless. The pressure of fatherhood and raising children while his career failed to reach the heights he once hoped for created long-term internal strain. David sought balance through theater and music, which helped him maintain emotional stability when television fame was no longer central to his life. By 2025, David Hart is 71 years old and continues to perform on stage and take part in small, personal artistic projects. His estimated net worth is around $500,000 derived from acting, advertising, and theater work. Geoffrey Thorne as Wilson Sweet. Geoffrey Thorne was born on January 20th, 1970 in Washington, D.C. In 1988, at just 18 years old, he played Wilson Sweet, a young, idealistic, yet vulnerable police officer navigating an adult world of power in the Heat of the Night. This role marked the beginning of Geoffrey's acting career at a very young age. Wilson Sweet reflected his own youth and inexperience within a harsh professional environment. Geoffrey repeatedly lost roles to older actors and was often judged as too young but too sharp, making his acting path increasingly unstable. During this period, his romantic relationships fell apart amid tension and uncertainty, partly due to erratic work schedules and partly because of the intense competitive pressure from repeated failed auditions. These personal breakdowns ran parallel to a growing sense of being pushed aside almost as soon as he entered the industry. The prolonged mental erosion led Geoffrey to a pivotal decision, leaving acting to focus on writing. This was also a time when his personal relationships continued to end chaotically, as he chose solitude to rebuild himself. Writing became the place where he could control the narrative of his own life, leading to significant behind-the-scenes contributions to Star Trek, Enterprise, and Leverage. By 2025, Geoffrey Thorne is 55 years old and continues to work steadily as a screenwriter, producer, and owner of independent creative projects. His estimated net worth is around $2 million, derived from television scripts, novels, and intellectual property, representing the outcome of a long detour shaped by hardship. Thom Gossom Jr. as Ted Marcus. Thom Gossom Jr. was born on May 2, 1952, in Birmingham, Alabama. In 1988, at the age of 36, he appeared in the Heat of the Night as Ted Marcus, a calm city councilman who often stood at the center of racial and power conflicts. This role placed Thom at the heart of the series' most socially challenging storylines. Ted Marcus carried the presence of someone constantly required to remain composed under pressure. As a black actor raised in the American South, Thom was often offered supporting roles that were symbolic rather than deeply developed, despite his proven ability on stage and television. He continually had to balance family responsibilities with professional exhaustion, as deserved opportunities frequently arrived late or were quietly taken away. As a price to be paid, the mental strain accumulated from a history of exclusion became his most enduring challenge. Thom chose to confront it through writing, documenting his journey of endurance and barrier breaking in the memoir Walk On, while continuing to act in socially significant projects such as Fight Club. Writing and acting became two sides of a self-healing process, helping him preserve his identity when the industry did not always welcome him. By 2025, Thom Gossom Jr. is 73 years old and remains active as an actor, writer, and motivational speaker. His estimated net worth is around $1 million, earned through acting, publishing, and media, not a measure of fame, but the result of a life spent moving through discrimination while holding on to his own voice. Karen Carlson as Sarah Hall. Karen Carlson was born on January 15, 1945, in Shreveport, Louisiana. In 1990, at the age of 45, she played Sarah Hall, a mature woman with a calm exterior but a turbulent private life, in the Heat of the Night. This was a period when Karen had experienced enough highs and lows to bring genuine emotion into the role. Sarah Hall mirrored the exhaustion behind Karen's own spotlight. Marriage was the darkest and most prolonged shadow of her life. Her marriage to David Soul ended in a bitter divorce, accompanied by allegations of infidelity and emotionally charged disputes that subjected her public image to harsh scrutiny. This collapse came precisely as her career was slowing due to ageism and gender bias, leaving Karen without a family anchor and with shrinking professional opportunities, despite her earlier prominence in Centennial and the Octagon. Her subsequent marriage to Devon Payne also failed to bring peace. Prolonged financial strain and ongoing disagreements kept Karen's mental state in constant defense mode. The psychological erosion caused by repeated relationship breakdowns gradually pushed her away from the spotlight, leading her to choose a private, controlled life rather than continuing to struggle within a ruthless entertainment industry. By 2025, Karen Carlson is 80 years old, retired, and living primarily off investments and accumulated assets. Her estimated net worth is around $5 million US, derived from real estate royalties and long-term investments, closing the portrait of a woman who once stood between glamour and ruin. More than 3 decades have passed, and the once familiar faces of In the Heat of the Night now carry the marks of time, tragedy, choices, and unexpected turns. Some quietly disappeared, some left in pain, and others continue living with wounds that never fully heal. Do you still recognize any of them? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue exploring more honest, raw, and deeply emotional behind-the-scenes stories of television legends from another era.